You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game.
So when it comes to arranging our plants, what we're going to do is we're going to create impressions inside the peat moss. Impressions so that you can understand how large the plant is actually going to take up as far as space in the pot. This is what I do. I usually rotate it, and then that circle that is created from the container, that's where I dig everything out. Make sure that you already have like another container on standby to put or displace the peat moss that you don't need into. The whole goal when I'm trying to plant these carnivorous plants is to have them at about the same level that they already are in their container. So theoretically, when I bury them, they'll be at the same spot or, close to the same spot as far as depth within the container. I never like filling a container all the way up to the highest point of the container simply because when there's water buildup within the container, you don't want your substrate or your peat moss in this case to spill over into the reservoir because then that'll get trapped in the filter that we have situated inside the tent right now. And then it just causes for more work, more hassle, and having to clean it out and all that stuff. So just be mindful of that when you're putting all the peat moss into your large container. In that, I'm also making sure that the distance between the other carnivorous plants is adequate and that their root systems won't necessarily intertwine with one another too intricately. Like I said, the root systems with carnivorous plants are rather shallow. They don't get too complicated or restrictive or, you know, extra, should I say. But it's still important to have a good space in between plants to allow for the maximum growth. And then especially within this grow tent, since there's going to be high humidity and high light levels, you want to make sure that they have an abundance of space to grow. I'm adding peat moss back into this container because I dug it a little bit too deep. And that you also want to make sure that when you're situating your plant within the container that you're positioning it in the way that you want to view it. If you place your plant backwards and then you take it out of the container and then actually bury it in the actual pot, it's going to take that much more energy to take it back out the pot and then, put it back in the pot. So make sure that you get it right the first time. And I'm thinking that's an adequate depth within the pot. With that, I'm also checking to make sure that these cobra lilies have enough space between the Sarracenia. The Sarracenia will be removed from its pot, but the cobra lilies will stay in their net pots. Only because this is a temporary, what do you say? Temporary project. I'm not going to be living here where I'm currently staying for too much longer, so I'm just doing a little bit of test runs so that when I get to the new place, everything will be established. I know how everything works with one another, so that's why I also did not add any perlite to this container. Naturally, I would, but for the sake of temporary fixes and temporary solutions, no perlite, just complete peat moss, a lot of light, a lot of humidity. I'm trying to see if I can make all the worlds between my chameleon and my carnivorous plants work together with, little effort. And I'm trying to save money. So now that we have the Sarracenia, potted and the cobra lilies potted, it is time to work at the Nepenthes. Understand, Sarracenia is a very, very, very durable plant. Um, it's gonna be stringy. It's gonna, burn out in some spots just because when you change the lighting, that's just what happens. But when it comes to like the overall longevity or the life cycle of the Sarracenias, they are quite remarkable. They will grow in most conditions. Adequate light, inadequate light, and abundance of light, they will grow. So just know that your Sarracenia dying back is probably not going to happen. When it comes to the pothos, because we're going to be putting pothos inside here too, it's going to be like the #1 hanging plant, and then we also will have probably a pothos sitting inside the reservoir. I always add microhizal. It's one of the funguses that make my pothos plants grow exponentially and very, 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 very quick. What I like to do is I like to put a base layer of peat moss or a base layer of soil. For this, we're using peat moss just because we want to make sure that the water stays acidic inside the reservoir and that there's a lack of nutrients in the reservoir as well, so that we don't never have to drain it. But I put that base layer down, and then with that base layer, I put microhizal on top of that, and then I place the root systems of the pothos right on top of that. And that's what we got. So in the next video, we will situate it actually in the grow tent. And until then,
You don't know me, but I know you. I want to play a game.